Finch had signed the contract with shaking hands, telling himself it was just a formality. A political marriage to end a century-long war between Earth and the Zellerian Empire. 12 months of pretending to be the devoted husband of Princess Frozen, and then freedom. The diplomats had assured him it was purely ceremonial, that the princess understood the arrangement perfectly. They had lied. The wedding ceremony took place aboard the neutral station orbiting Jupiter's fourth moon. Finch wore the traditional Earth military dress uniform, though he was just a low-ranking communications officer who happened to match the Zellerian genetic compatibility requirements. Frozen stood across from him, in flowing robes that seemed to shift between silver and violet, her luminescent skin casting a soft glow in the dim chapel. Her eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle on her face, fixed on him with an intensity that made his stomach turn. "Do you accept this bond?" the officiant asked in the universal tongue. "I do," Finch said. As rehearsed, Frozen's response came in her native language, a melody of sounds that his translator chip rendered as, "I claim you, now and forever." He should have paid attention to the word choice. The first month was bearable. They maintained separate quarters on the princess's flagship, appearing together only for official functions. Frozen played her part, perfectly gracious, dignified, every inch the royal peacemaker. But Finch noticed the way her gaze followed him across rooms, how she always positioned herself between him and the exit. "The contract says 1 year," he reminded her during a private dinner in the 6th week. "Then I return to Earth." Frozen set down her crystal goblet, her 3 eyes blinking in sequence, an expression he'd learned meant amusement. "Contracts are a human construct, Finch. Among my people, marriage is written in the soul. That's not what the diplomats told me." "The diplomats told you what you needed to hear to save your planet." She leaned forward, her elongated fingers drumming on the table. "The war would have consumed Earth within a year. Your leaders were desperate, so they offered me what I wanted. A fake husband. A real one." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Finch pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the metal floor. "You can't be serious. This was supposed to be temporary." Frozen rose with fluid grace, her 7-foot frame towering over him. "I have lived 300 of your years, Finch. I have commanded fleets, negotiated with 1,000 species, and watched stars die. In all that time, I have never met anyone who looked at me the way you did during our first meeting. I was terrified. You are honest." She moved closer, and he caught the scent of ozone and something floral. "Every suitor my father sent me came with calculated flattery and political ambition. You came with fear and duty and a strange determination to do the right thing, even at cost to yourself. You are ... refreshing." Finch backed toward the door, but it had already sealed. Of course it had. "You can't keep me prisoner." "I'm not keeping you prisoner. You're free to move about the ship, to communicate with Earth, to live your life. You simply cannot leave the marriage. Or me." Over the following months, Finch tried everything. He contacted Earth Command, only to learn that the treaty's fine print he'd been too overwhelmed to read carefully did indeed contain clauses about permanent union and irrevocable bonds. Government officials were sympathetic but clear. Earth's survival depended on Frozen's cooperation, and if she wanted the marriage to continue, it would continue. He attempted to make himself unlikable, adopting annoying habits and difficult behavior. Frozen found it entertaining. He tried ignoring her completely. She simply waited, patient as stone, until loneliness drove him to conversation again. The strange thing was, Frozen kept her word about everything else. She didn't force intimacy or demand affection. She gave him space, resources, even assigned him meaningful work coordinating communications between human and Zellerian colonies. She was, in every practical sense, the perfect partner, except for the part where she refused to let him go. "Why me?" Finch finally asked one night, as they stood in the observation deck watching the Andromeda galaxy wheel overhead. "You could have anyone. Why trap yourself with someone who doesn't want to be here?" Frozen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "When I was young, my mother told me that true partnership isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who challenges you to become more than you are. You make me more human." "That's perfect. More real." "That's a terrible reason to trap someone, perhaps." She turned to face him, her 3 eyes reflecting the starlight. "But in 3 more months, when our first anniversary comes, you'll have a choice. I've authorized the legal documents. You can dissolve our marriage and return to Earth with full honors and a generous settlement." Finch stared at her. "You're letting me go. I'm giving you a choice, which I should have done from the beginning. Stay because you want to, not because you're bound to." She reached out, her hand hovering near his but not touching. "I am many things, Finch, I am old and powerful and sometimes terrible, but I don't want to be the person who cages someone they care for. The irony wasn't lost on him. For months he'd raged against his captivity, and now, offered freedom, all he could think about was the way Frozen laughed at his terrible jokes, how she'd quietly learned to make his favorite Earth coffee, the nights they'd spent in companionable silence, working on their respective projects. When had the cage started feeling like home? 3 months, he said finally. 3 months, she agreed. But as Finch walked back to his quarters that night, he realized he was no longer counting down the days until escape. He was counting them until he had to decide what kind of person he wanted to be and whether home was a place or a person who saw him clearly and wanted him anyway. The war was over, but Finch's real battle was just beginning.